Good evening again. Gordon Causey coming to you live. And guess who's here? Candy the Wonder Pup, always. Yeah, good girl. And she doesn't care about the pets. All she cares about is what's in my pocket. All right, sit down, shake a paw, lay down, speak, speak. Give me a good one. All right, close enough. There you go. Candy is looked after. If you're new to my channel, this is the standard operating procedure. This is how almost all my videos start, with Candy glomming all over me to get a treat. I've conditioned her. Or she's conditioned me, as the case may be. But again, thank you for watching. It's now Sunday evening, May 19th, 2024. In the background, you may hear some fireworks going off. Tomorrow is Queen Victoria Day in Canada. What we refer to, many Canadians refer to it as the May 2-4 weekend, because it usually falls in and around the 24th of May. And a 2-4, the reason we say the May 2-4 is because for years, a case of beer, Canadians referred to a case of beer as a 2-4, because the sometimes called a Scarborough suitcase of beer. Hence May 2-4. But I'm digressing away from the topic. Before I get going, always appreciate the thumbs up. Always appreciate subscriptions to this Joe Nobody, miserable, pathetic little YouTube channel with zero production values. Just one guy speaking 99.9% of the time, off the cuff, live and unscripted. And I have a longtime subscriber to the channel, someone who comments regularly and whose engagement I genuinely appreciate. The handle they go by is Sojourner Didymus. And I'm gathering that Sojourner Didymus is American, which I'm not. I'm a Canadian. Got a maple leaf on my shirt somewhere, if I can get my finger to go to the right spot there. I'm Canadian, and I suspect that Sojourner is likely Black, because a lot of the issues that Sojourner brings up relate to specifically issues that I would guess are pertinent to the Black community, particularly in the United States. And that's the case with this Tulsa real estate fund. But I wanted to branch it out and make the discussion larger beyond just an investment fund based out of the United States, the Tulsa Real Estate Fund. But Sojourner has been asking me if it was a scam from the start and things like this. And I looked into it a bit. I haven't gone deep into it, but I have linked down below an SEC registration document. I've got it up on my computer right now, an offering statement or something to that effect, offering circular. And basically what is happening is the principal of this fund, an individual by the name of Jay Morrison. I did make a few little scribbly notes. Jay Morrison put together a limited liability corporation, so not incorporated, but a limited liability corporation. It's almost like a sole proprietorship, and was soliciting investors to invest in a fund that was going to be fixated on the real estate market in the United States. And he was particularly focused on raising capital among African Americans, among Black Americans, seeking to have them invest in his fund. And there's another person with whom I had zero familiarity, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Boyce Watkins, who has a PhD, hence the title doctor. He's not a medical doctor. I think he has his PhD in financial services, in economics, something along that lines. And so he's entitled to the title. He's entitled to a PhD and to call himself doctor. And I've watched a little bit of him on YouTube. Very articulate, presents himself very well. And he was an early investor back in 2017 in this Tulsa real estate fund. And according to him, he did it because he simply likes to support Black businesses, and he thinks that this is something that is important within the Black community in the United States. That I think he would frame it in the context of we need to support our own. And so he had heard, I believe he said the gentleman's name was Nipsey Russell, who was a famous Black comedian from back in the 70s, guy who used to be on, I think, Laugh-In and a bunch of Dean Martin roasts. He would be guest on that. He was a comedian, probably did Las Vegas. He was a reasonably big name, and not as big as Eddie Murphy, not as big as Richard Pryor, but there was another guy, Flip Wilson. I'd put him in that category. Anyway, he heard that this, I believe it's Nipsey Russell, the last name is definitely Russell, was investing $10,000. And so this Dr. Boyce Watkins said, yeah, what the heck, I'll throw $10,000 at it. And he claims to have he said, I never read the prospectus. I didn't go diving into the financial statements or anything. And if you do read this offering statement, this offering circular that I've linked down below is something similar. It's very much similar to what a prospectus is, which is something investors will often ask for when they're contemplating an investment. Let me see your prospectus. Let me see what you're aiming to do, what the business is geared toward. And in a prospectus type document, it will outline the risk factors involved. And if you read that document, you'll see that it has something that is referred to as a going concern flag, or a going concern stipulation, saying that there is serious doubt as to the ability of the Tulsa Real Estate Fund to continue as a going concern. And which means, we may not make it. There is serious doubt as to our ability to continue as a going concern. And it's, this is why we're doing this is why we're doing this offering, is because we need cash, because we can't, we're not generating enough, revenue or profit to sustain the business. So we're going to investors to try and keep us afloat. And then it outlines a whole litany of risk factors. And it was a fund that was going to be investing in real estate, and which is a very risky proposition. And it says right in it, factors which could have a material adverse effect on our operations and future prospects include, but are not limited to. So it says, here's a grab bag of the risks associated with an investment in this fund. But and these are just some of them. These are not the only ones. The ability to effectively deploy the proceeds raised in the offering. So you give us money, we need to deploy it properly. We may not be able to do that properly. We may not be able to do that effectively. Our ability to attract and retain members to our online platform. This was referred to as crowdsourcing. And I gather they used an online forum to attract investors, but then investors don't always stick around. Sometimes they want to pull their money out, and you have to have liquid capital on hand for those who wish to divest. Changes in economic conditions generally, and the real estate and securities markets specifically. Limited ability to dispose of assets because of the relative illiquidity of real estate investments. And I'll leave you to read the rest on your own, if you're so inclined. But it lays out a whole litany of the risks that could imperil a person's investment. And it says very clearly on more than one occasion in that document that investors should be ready to lose some and even all of their investment. So this is high risk investing. And from the manner in which this Dr. Boyce Watkins presents himself, 10,000, he can afford to lose it. Others can't. And yet greed and the desire for a quick buck leads many to circumvent their better judgment and to just put blind faith and trust. And this Dr. Boyce Watkins kind of promoted this Tulsa real estate fund to the extent that he's a prominent individual in the Black community. He's known to be financially successful. And he would tell people, I'm not giving you investment advice, because there are rules around that. There are rules around that. He would say, I'm not giving investment advice. However, here's what I have invested in. And then he would list his investments along with the Tulsa real estate fund, as well as perhaps some stocks and bonds and other things. But he would say, it's not investment advice, but I know the way that people operate. Some will say, well, if Dr. Boyce Watkins is willing to risk 10 grand, well, I'll put my money up. I've got $10,000 sitting there. I'll throw it all in. And that may be all their investment capital. And so they put all their eggs in one basket. And then if that one investment, in the investing world, diversification is, everyone talks about it. You need to be diversified. This is why many people rely on things like mutual funds, seg funds, segregated funds, or exchange traded funds, because it allows a small investor to spread their money out, even if it's only a small amount, to spread it out over numerous different investments, different sectors, precious metals, real estate, stocks, tech stocks, biotech, manufacturing, tech. There's so many different sectors, and the more diversification you have, the better. But a big part of the reason why it seems to have blown up online, at least within the Black community, I believe, is because a lot of Black individuals, of Black Americans in particular, feel that they got scammed. That, as I understand it, Jay Morrison, I'm not vouching for anything I put out there. That check into this yourself, but I believe he was paying himself as manager of the fund a salary of $500,000 a year. And when you're managing a fund that is not returning, that has zero ROI, zero return on investment, that doesn't generate enough revenue, then you have to rely on your investors to pay your own salary. And you can look at publicly traded companies all over the map that are in this situation, where the executives of the company, usually it's not just when it's a publicly traded company on a registered stock exchange, like the NASDAQ, like the Amex, like the Pink Sheets. These are publicly traded stocks. Some trade on an exchange, some trade over the counter, but they are publicly traded. And typically these companies are almost always incorporated, and they'll have a president, a vice president, a treasurer. They'll hire auditors, and all this takes money. Being a publicly traded company takes money. Preparing these SEC type documents takes money. And if you're operating in a startup style business, we're going to start investing in real estate, high risk. And there seems to be some animosity toward both Jay Morrison and Dr. Boyce Watkins, because it's almost like black on black racism. It's like they were exploiting members of their own community. And, the poster child for Ponzi scheme type investing, in my estimation, would be someone along the lines of Bernie Madoff. And I don't know what Bernie Madoff's ethnic background is. I think he's white, maybe Jewish, maybe not. But generally speaking, in the capital markets, I don't think anyone gives a rat's rosy rear end when when they're looking for investments, they don't care what the money has no color. Now, it is a fact of the matter that it is a fact in my mind that a large, I shouldn't say a large, I will say a significant portion of the American population is racist, has racist inclinations, looks and says, oh, this is a fund for Black people. You know, this is headed up by a Black individual who is selling this as a fund to improve the lot of Black Americans. I'm not going to invest in it. I'm white. I'm equally sure, though, that there are also some white individuals who would say, oh, I want to appear all good and virtuous, and so I'm going to throw some money at it regardless. So because I want to do my bit, call it white guilt if you want. This is such a touchy subject when you get around race. And that's why I kind of labeled this. The subtitle is, what is the most, which race is the most racist? Spoiler alert, I'm going to give it up right now. I think every race is as prone to racism as any other race. I don't think any racial group has a monopoly on racism. I think Black Americans can be as racist as white Americans and Latin Americans and Asian Americans and any ethnic group, Jewish, you know, and it's not just within the confines of the United States of America. Look at the former Yugoslavia and what happened there when Yugoslavia under Tito in the 90s, Tito died, and that country dissolved into a massive civil war, the end result of which was the creation of 5 or 6 new countries. And it was Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, Croatia, can't even name them all. 5, 6 countries sprang out of Yugoslavia because what happened when Tito died is that divisions that had been, Tito was a strong iron-fisted ruler, and there were divisions within Yugoslavia based on ethnic, religious, linguistic, territorial lines, and there were hatreds that were generational. But under Tito's iron-fisted control, they stayed under the surface, and then when Tito died and that iron fist was removed, all these hatreds, generational hatreds, sprang up, and we got a massive civil war. And it's actually out of that war that this term ethnic cleansing got invented. There was never a term ethnic cleansing until that war, and ethnic cleansing apparently took place in Yugoslavia, where the Serbian community wanted to be, you know, only for Serbians, and Croatians only for Croatians, and I don't know, Bosnia Herzegovinians only for Bosnians or whatever. And it's just an unfortunate aspect of our world, and it plays back. I've done 2 previous videos on racism, and for me, racism is just a form of tribalism, which I think is the default of the human condition. We default to seeking out those members of our tribe, and our tribe can be nationalistic, it can be racial, it can be linguistic, it can be religious. And now our tribes are going even further, you know, political. We're devolving into political tribes, right and left, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, ideology, woke ideology. If if you don't buy into the whole LGBTQ, et cetera, ad nauseum agenda, well, then, you know, you're not part of my tribe. And we're fighting against each other. And these divisions are being sown intentionally to keep humanity divided. Because when you look at the people sitting around at the WEF and the Club of Rome and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderberger Group, they don't give a rat's rosy rear end about race or sexuality or which language a person speaks or what religion they are. when 32-degree Masons gather together in their secretive little lodges with their secret, rituals and everything else. They have no restrictions on membership. It's not limited to Christians or Jews or Muslims or Hindus or Buddhists or Shintos or any other religious group. Everyone is welcome at the table, so long as you sell your soul and admit to being, the initial, for Masonry, the initial initiation rite when you become a Mason. One of the things they say is they ask, why do you want to join, or why are you here, or something. I'm not a Mason. My grandfather on my father's side was my paternal grandfather. So they ask, why are you here? And the initiate says, I am in the darkness and I wish to be brought into the light. And if you're a Christian, Jesus Christ is the light. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus is the light of the world. And so for a Christian to become a Mason, I think that's a repudiation of their Christian faith. I think it may even be blasphemy against the Holy Spirit to deny the divinity and that Jesus Christ is the light of the world. I think in taking that oath and that making that commitment to a Masonic lodge, you are spitting on the cross. And for me, that's opinion, but it's opinion that I view as fact, biblically sound fact. Some, though, will disagree and say they have a different opinion. And that's a line in the sand with me. That's a line you do not cross. Anyway, so in terms of this, for Sojourner Didymus, who may be watching now, I have 4 people watching. The live chat is on. You're welcome to, and everyone and anyone is welcome to chime in. I always enjoy engagement, but I know a fair bit about the financial sector. In a previous life, I worked in it, and it is a mug's game. It is designed, the individual investor operating on their own, with these online brokerages, they're all out there. All the banks have them. There's E-Trade and all the others, Questrade, what have you. The people who think they can DIY, do it yourself, DIY rather, do it yourself investing. They think, they can beat the game. And you look at the financial pages and you'll read about, small, insignificant little companies making 100, 200, 300% gains in their stock price in days or weeks or months. Year or two, stocks do go up 1,000%. It does happen, but it's a volatile ride. It plays on your emotions, and the market knows that. And the market is a difficult master, and it will play with your emotions. And it will ultimately, you'll have. I've had winners and I've had losers, and ego gets in the way. Ego gets in the way. Everyone will tell you about they know a stock that they bought and it's tanked, and so they've cut their losses, they've sold it, they've taken the loss, and then they look back and they see it climbing again. And I won't make that mistake again. And then the next one, they ride all the way down to zero until the company is dissolved and their shares are 100% worthless. It is a difficult game. If anyone has any questions about it, you're more than welcome to ask. I can't say enough about it. I did fixate on it for too long, read as much as I could, learned as much as I could about it. And At the end of the day, if you, as an individual investor, you're not going to win. And in terms of this Tulsa real estate fund, was Jay Morrison preying on the Black community in the United States of America? I can't see the man's heart. I do know implicitly that investing in real estate is incredibly risky, especially for the smaller player. Who are the big players? Donald Trump. That's where he made a lot of his money. Sharunian's here. Jay Morrison used race to take advantage that, and you use the word affinity fraud. Again, I cannot see Jay Morrison's heart. I know that the investing in the real estate market is incredibly difficult, especially when you're, I think you raised something in the neighborhood of $15 million. He's a guppy. Trump is not the only guy who's a billionaire developing billion-dollar properties. And he sees this little guppy come in and want to develop an area and maybe even likes some of his ideas. And I'm not saying this would be Trump, just someone in that stratosphere, someone who has access to billions of dollars of capital against some little guy managing a fund with 10, 15 million. And Trump can say, look, he's buying up these properties. He wants to develop this into a commercial district. You know what? I'm going to buy up the property right next door, and I'm going to make it an industrial area, and I'm going to tank the property values, and then I'll be able to get them cheap. And then it's a shark tank. And to look at Jay Morrison and say, oh, he knew, he was paying himself $500,000 a year, as I understand it. And most individuals look on that, a big 6-figure salary, $1 million every 2 years. And, oh my gosh, that's way too much money. Well, then don't invest. You can look all over the public markets and you'll find countless companies that have been losing money for decades, sometimes 10, 15, 20 years. They've been losing money. And what they do is they just keep issuing more and more shares. And they start out at 10 million, then they authorize another 10 million share offering and another 10 million. Then they get up to 100 million. Sometimes they get up to 1 billion shares. And then they do what's called the share consolidation, a reverse split, where you had a 10-to-1 reverse split. So your 100 shares that you held in that company now become 10 shares. You had 10 shares that were worth a dime each, $1, and now you have 1 share worth $1. Still $1. I mean, I'm doing it in that fashion to make the math easy. And to think that, I think it's a racist attitude, Sharunian, to look at a Black individual and say, well, this Black individual shouldn't be exploiting members of the Black community. White people exploit white people. Indian people exploit Indian people. Filipinos exploit Filipinos. Why should Blacks be any different? And this is where I get to, which race is the most racist? We're all prone. Any one group will, it's not like Black Americans are superior to every other race out there, and that that Black Americans operate on a higher ethical plane than the rest of the population. And you should not be surprised that there are that there are Black individuals who are sharks. And I'm not even saying that Jay Morrison is one. I'm not saying he is one. I don't know the man. And as a matter of fact, I don't even think I've seen a video of him. The only videos I've seen are of this Dr. Boyce Watkins. And so what I've heard about Jay Morrison is secondhand from Dr. Boyce Watkins. And Boyce Watkins described Jay Morrison as very energetic, very intelligent, very articulate, a good salesperson, someone who's able to convince people to pull out their checkbooks, to pull out their debit cards and transfer funds. Very good at doing that, because at the end of the day, investing is based on emotion. If you can tap into a person's emotions, you can get them to trust you. And that's ultimately what it comes down to a lot of the times, is just a matter of trust. Whether they're black, white, Filipino, Chinese, doesn't matter. If you trust the person. And I think, could we say perhaps that Jay Morrison was playing on racism? I think we could. You know, he presented himself as a very successful, wealthy, smart individual, and being black, he was able to attract I want to be like him. Yeah, it's such a difficult topic to discuss. And what Jay Morrison is doing is legal but unethical, according to Sherunian. You know what? I don't have any issue with that. The capital markets in many ways are unethical. I believe that. That's an opinion I hold, that the capital markets in general. So the sphere in which Jay Morrison chose to operate is what I view as a cesspool. It's a swamp. It's a pigsty. And so, you know, when you go wandering, when you go tromping through the pigsty, the smell is going to, and the crap and corruption, it's going to rub off on you. It is a pigsty. And I think there's a tendency to want to blame others for our own failings. I would say to the individuals who invested money in that fund and who lost, did you read that offering prospectus, that offering circulator that I've put, that I've shared down below in the description of this video? Did you read that? Did you read where it says there's serious doubt about this fund's ability to continue as a going concern? Did you read where it said that investors in this fund should be prepared to lose some, if not all, of their investment? You should be able to write off the whole, you should be ready to write off the whole thing. You're not investing, really, you're gambling. And it's like blaming the casino for, you know, because you couldn't win at blackjack or roulette or whatever other game you're playing there. So I get it because I've been there. But, you know, I don't like to look at it through a racial lens. Julian Gordon spent $40,000 on the TREF. He got nothing back. No. And that's the other thing, because it's crowdsourced, and it's not publicly traded, that means it's incredibly liquid. And so the units that you buy in the fund, to whom are you going to sell them? If the fund itself isn't willing to buy them back, you've got to find another investor who's willing to pay you for them. And ideally, you would want them to pay more than you paid. But hey, if you had 40,000 and you get someone to take on your units in the fund for 10,000, and better than nothing, better to get 10,000 than zero, you know, and that is spelled out in that circular. Sherunian Allegiance said Jay could possibly put all the money from the crowd fund to offshore accounts. One of the things, I don't even think the company had a board of directors. So you're putting complete blind faith and trust in this Jay Morrison individual from where I sit. And that's dangerous, to put that degree of faith and trust in one single individual. But I know it's not just in the Black community that this exists. Some know my family history, or some know my family situation. And on my wife's side of the family, there was an individual who was doing similar. raising money within the community and using it and investing in real estate properties, and doing it and did it with a certain degree of success. Individuals were able to get their money out of it and more. They got a return on their investment, a positive return on their investment. But anyway, let's end it there, because I really don't, I'm a Canadian. And if you can't see me, I'm white, not that it matters. There are so many things going on in the world otherwise. I mean, everyone should have heard by now that the president of Iran and that country's Secretary of the Interior, or the number 2 man in the government, the top dog is the Ayatollah Khamenei, is the religious spiritual leader, and he's somewhat the head of the government. And then next up is the president, and the next up is, and I'm not sure exactly what his title is. I forget. I'd have to look it up again. But basically, those are the 3 top leaders, and 2 of them, everyone has heard by now, have likely been killed in a helicopter crash somewhere on the Iranian Azerbaijanian, the border between Iran and Azerbaijan. A helicopter flying back from Azerbaijan, where they had a joint venture in opening up a dam, a hydroelectric facility of some description, and so they had some meeting, and then there were 3 helicopters that were flying back, and the second most senior individual in the Iranian government and the 3rd most senior person, their helicopter crashed. And I don't know if the helicopter has even been found at this point. And there are now reports out that are saying that they are presumed dead, not confirmed dead, but presumed to be dead. Sharunian Allegiance says Gordon is a human being. We're all human beings at the end of the day. I don't know if you're referring to me. You mentioned Julian Gordon. And so is it Julian Gordon, or Gordon Causey? Whatever. We're all human beings. Everyone is a human being, and it would be so nice if we could get past this. Unfortunately, I think it's just the default condition of human nature to fall back on tribalism, and to paint those outside of your tribe as being evil, and your tribe as being the virtuous, and to having blind spots about the failings of your own tribe, because we all have failings. But my failings are okay. My tribe's failings are okay. They're justified because I can rationalize them, because this was done to us or that was done to us. And because of that, the evil I've committed, the evil my group has committed, is excusable. I can be excused for my evil behavior and my group's evil behavior because we're more sinned against than sinning. And every group and every individual has the same propensity to do that. Sharunian Allegiance is planning to head over to Scotland. Ah, great. I have some ancestry on my mother's father's side. About 20-25% of me, I think, is Scottish. Not that I care. I've never been to Scotland myself. So I was planning to go over. She is planning to go over to Scotland in the summer. I say, Sharunian, are you a man or a woman? So I know what pronoun to use. I think it's male, but with just the name Sharuyan comes across as Sharon, so I tend to default to she, but I think you've told me before, male. But at any rate, it's Sunday night, and we'll see what the rest of the week and the rest of May and what happens going into June. I enjoyed my video of yesterday better, talking about all things COVID and all things potentially coming forward with bird flu. I like to comment that that video generated there is a comment that was generated talking about, I was talking about how bird flu started in birds, moved to cows, and now it's moved to humans. But at this juncture, it is still not capable, they say, of transmitting human to human. And someone made the comment, but we're working on it. And that would not surprise me in the least, that there's a lab somewhere engaging in directed evolution, gain of function type research, trying to juice up the bird flu virus so that it can transmit from human to human to human. And I think we have to be very cautious with anything we see coming out in the mainstream media, because it is such a cesspool of lies and half-truths and propaganda, and difficult world that we live in. And I think what tends to happen is people tend to go onto Parler and Telegram and, to a degree, YouTube and Twitter X and all these other social media type platforms, because they've lost complete and total faith in mainstream journalism. And there are people who think that what they see on Parler, Twitter, Telegram, and the like, they think that this is the unvarnished truth. And that's as dangerous as blindly following what the mainstream media tells you. There are individuals on Parler, Twitter, and these social media platforms who are addicted to engagement, who know that if they put the more outlandish and the more conspiratorial their content is, the greater will be their following. And in some cases, when it's monetized, then they get cash for it. And so in many ways, they can be even worse than the mainstream media. And so you have to be incredibly cautious in today's world. Sharunian, I think this is a suggestion that to do a collaboration with this Julian Gordon. I don't even know who Julian Gordon is. I'll look him up when we're done. Maybe reach out to him. Who knows? I always enjoy conversations on a wide variety of topics. I'll see who he is and see if his content has any interest for me. And then likewise, he would have to look at my content and go, well, he might say, I don't want to talk to this Canadian moron, whatever the case. Anyway, God bless. See you in a few nights, see what happens in the world. Haven't got anything top of mind right now screaming at me to talk about. I've beaten the war in Israel to death. I think I've beaten COVID to death. We'll see what happens about my prediction and warning about a coming new vaccine mandates. If that does come to fruition, as I think it will at some point, maybe for bird flu, maybe for something else. If it does, I will be all over it, unless Bill C-63 comes along and I get thrown, and I'm locked down on house arrest because of expressing unacceptable views. And maybe that'll be my next video, talking about this dangerous Bill C-63 and Trudeau's Orwellian dystopian Canada that he's ushering us into, where the thought police will be knocking on my door because I refuse to acknowledge, a guy who pretends to be a woman. I refuse to accept that individual as being allowed to compete against women in women's sports and to use, a locker room for girls. I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to acknowledge it, and I'm not going to validate it. I'm going to do the exact opposite of those things. Not going to be mean, not going to be hateful, but I'm not going to join that clown world or bow the knee to it. And when I look at Bill C-63, it strikes me that that could get me into trouble. And if that's what it comes down to, if being loyal, if acknowledging the fabric of reality becomes a crime in this country, then I will be a criminal. So anyway, God bless. Thank you for watching. And again, always appreciate the likes, the shares, the subscriptions. I think I'm 920 something now. So the march to 1,000 continues. Hopefully come up with some more Trudeau jokes. And we'll talk to you all soon. God bless. Shrunyan, thanks.